Chapter 10, Producing Era of Love, Special Lectures. Typing out the word of Spirit proclaimed by God was essential to categorizing the content. August 2003, March 2007, and August 2008. God opened the word of the Gospel of John in the Spirit. Every time he opened the word for us, it took 6 months to type and categorize the content. So if we added this to the times he opened the word, it turns out that God gave us this precious word for 1.5 years. His command was that we divide 왕이 오신다 Book of John into 2 parts. The first part would be chapters 1 through 9, and the second, chapters 10 through 21. Deacons Sumin Lee and Hee-seung Lee took on the work of typing the first round of the opened word, and Deacon Jin-sun No typed the word opened in the Spirit the third and second times, which were applicable to 왕이 오신다 Book of John Part 1, that is, chapters 1 through 9. The word was opened the second and third times for chapter 10 and beyond. The people who typed Part 2 could no longer do so due to their jobs. God's command that the leaders in the U.S. that were receiving 사랑시대 words were to pick up the work of typing. For 15 months, starting July 2009, they were able to type 132 files. Categorizing by keyword. The work of categorizing by keyword began from the time I started to organize 왕이 오신다 Book of Genesis. I would minutely separate and save the word on my computer according to categories. There was the word for the reformation of the Spirit and word for the spiritual interpretation of every single Bible verse. A great deal of time was required to categorize the typed out content, much more time than it was conceived. I wasn't familiar with computers, so it took even more time. The first job was to print out the content, and the second was to organize it. This was inefficient and very time-consuming. Now I just do the work directly on the computer. Usually, a sermon recording is about 90 minutes long, and its typing transcription on A4 paper comes out to around 14 pages. However, rather than writing the sentences continuously from one side of the margin to the other, I would jump to the next line, creating stanza-like blocks so that readers could easily understand the word. This doubled the size to 25 to 30 pages. Then I worked on the part focusing on spiritual interpretation and categorized it by keyword. To categorize by keyword, I repeatedly read 1 to 2 pages 3 or 4 times, then gave it a core title. To do this, I couldn't not overflowingly eat the word. Typically, for each sermon, God gave us around 20 keywords. I could only do this work by giving my whole entire focus and mental energy, but due to day, night, and early morning worship services every day, I wouldn't have much time. Even if I started in the morning, I had to offer day worship, so that left me with only about 6 hours. On Sundays, I couldn't do any work because there were 4 worship times. Since it took about 18 hours to organize the content contained in one sermon, it would take 3 days. Ultimately, I could only organize 2 sermons a week. 344 sermons and 173 weeks worth of work make 왕이 오신다 Book of John. With 52 weeks in a year and 6 hours a day just to organize basic content, this makes more than 3 years worth of work. To organize Part 2, I couldn't offer day worship starting September 2009 and halted my daily 2-hour physical fitness exercise. I spent more than 10 hours a day organizing the word and poured my entire all into this work. It was really hard on the flesh, but due to Him, the one who gives us strength, I was able to do everything. Keyword categorization of the word for reforming the Spirit as well as spiritual interpretation of Scripture for 왕이 오신다 Book of John Parts 1 and 2 were being saved. All the while, the treasury started to fill abundantly. That is, the time of harvest was steadily coming. While organizing 왕이 오신다, Book of John, basic keywords for other books got developed. Cross, resurrection, and second coming, and the Word was God, meet the King of Light, surrender of the other, he seizes the dragon, and it is the serpent of old, and why did Judas sell Jesus? And through 52 sermons, restoring the family and the completion of the love of the cross were produced. And for the book, 40-Day Resolution Worship, keywords were developed through the proclaimed word when a saint offered a 40-day resolution worship. Keywords are fundamentals that create food for the era of love. Developing special lectures of the era of love. Cell groups were assigned in Q&A Church in August 2007. When we offered worship every week, we needed a curriculum or course of study. Since God told me to open the door of the warehouse, inside which was the Word stored up in the meantime, we had material and content. We brought out the first issue of the Era of Love special lectures, which were from the Word of the sermons, which were the source of all subject matters compiled according to classifications. All the labor was starting to bear fruit. After 6 years of distributing the special lectures once a month, the final and last issue, number 71, was distributed on May 25, 2013. Afterward, some cell groups used the Food for the Era of Love series as a curriculum.